For 32-year-old Stacy Hunsucker, home was Mount Holly, North Carolina. She had married her high school sweetheart Joshua, and together they were raising Piper and Willow. Everyone who knew her said the same thing. She was a great mother, a happy person. But beneath this picture of domestic contentment, something sinister was brewing. And on the 23rd of September 2018, Stacy's life would be stolen in the most calculated, chilling way imaginable. Stacy Robinson had been born in Mecklenburg County, the daughter of John and Susie Robinson. She had 2 brothers, Eric and Paul, and a sister, Amy. After graduating from East Gaston High School, she went on to earn an associate's degree in paralegal sciences from Gaston College. She worked as a paralegal at 2 law firms, Ted Grieve and Associates, and Reagan before transitioning to what she truly loved: teaching. She worked at the preschool at First Baptist Charlotte, then at First Methodist Preschool in Mount Holly, and later at the Stowe Young Men's Christian Association. Her friend Shelley O'Day said she was skilled at crafting, making little painted wooden signs that she would sell. In the summer of 2018, O'Day stopped by Stacy's home to pick up a welcome sign she'd purchased for $50. It was during her time working at a department store that she met Joshua Lee Hunsucker. He was 2 years older, and the first thing he noticed about her was her height. Stacy stood at 5'11", and Joshua was 6'5". He asked her out several times, and she turned him down. But Joshua was persistent. He found out she played softball and turned up at her practice session, joining her team. Both were successful players with the potential to turn professional. Eventually, their relationship became romantic. They married in 2010 in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. The couple had been together since high school, and everyone thought they were happy. They welcomed 2 daughters, Piper Elizabeth and Willow Darlene. Joshua had become a flight paramedic with Atrium Health's MedCenter Air, a job he'd held since 2013. He was a former college football player, confident and persuasive. Stacy became a full-time homemaker, devoting herself to her daughters. On nights out, Stacy and Joshua went to concerts and cookouts with friends. O'Day said they were just a cute couple. She never heard them argue. Stacy was a lifetime member of Mount Holly First United Methodist Church, where she participated in many groups and activities. She loved crafting, going to the beach, watching sports, and taking pictures of her daughters and herself. But there were struggles beneath the surface. In February 2013, following the birth of their first daughter Piper, Stacy began experiencing unexplained medical problems. The symptoms were vague, but deeply troubling. Her health seemed to decline without any clear explanation, leaving doctors baffled. Then, just 5 months later, in July 2013, disaster struck. A devastating fire tore through their home, destroying most of the couple's belongings. The blaze left them reeling, both emotionally and financially. Everything they had worked for was gone. Friends rallied around them, desperate to help the young family rebuild. A GoFundMe campaign was launched by Suzanne Steinbroner, a friend of the couple's, to help with the mounting costs. The page would become a chronicle of Stacy's mysterious medical decline, but Stacy's health problems only continued to worsen. In November 2014, after the birth of their second daughter Willow, Stacy was admitted to hospital with dangerously low heart rate and blood pressure. She was placed in the intensive care unit for several days. The medical team ran test after test, searching for answers, but they couldn't determine what was causing her symptoms. It was as if her body was under attack from an invisible enemy. Suzanne updated the GoFundMe page, describing Stacy's condition. After many tests, she wrote, the doctors were still stumped as to what was going on. In January 2015, Stacy was readmitted with a low heart rate. This time, the situation became life-threatening. Once she was settled into her room, she went into cardiac arrest. Her heart simply stopped. She was placed on a ventilator to help her breathe, fighting for her life whilst doctors scrambled to understand what was happening to this young woman. The following month, February 2015, a decision was made that shocked everyone. Stacy had a pacemaker implanted, an extreme measure for a woman who was not yet 30 years old. For someone so young to require a device to regulate their heartbeat suggested something was seriously, fundamentally wrong with her heart's electrical system. What no one knew at the time was that these weren't natural medical problems at all. Looking back, every symptom Stacy experienced was later found to be consistent with poisoning from tetrahydrozoline, a chemical, when ingested, it can seriously affect the heart and body, sometimes fatally. The pattern was there all along. Unexplained episodes of low heart rate and blood pressure, sudden cardiac events that baffled medical professionals, a young woman with no family history of heart disease suddenly requiring a pacemaker. Joshua, with his extensive medical training as a flight paramedic, would have known exactly what symptoms to expect. He would have known how to administer the poison in doses that wouldn't immediately kill, but would cause chronic, debilitating health problems. He would have known that standard medical tests wouldn't detect it. He would have known that doctors would blame her heart, not suspect poisoning. For her mother, Susie, there was always a gnawing worry. If she had a dream that something was wrong, she would call her daughter immediately to make sure everything was okay. A mother's instinct telling her that something wasn't right, even if she couldn't put her finger on what. The medical emergencies had created another devastating problem: crushing debt. The GoFundMe campaign had helped, but the financial pressure was immense. Hospital stays, specialists, the pacemaker surgery, ongoing care. The bills kept mounting. And all the while, Joshua was planning something far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. He was slowly, methodically poisoning his wife, creating a medical history that would make her sudden death seem inevitable, unremarkable, natural. On the evening of the 23rd of September 2018, Joshua called 911. He told responding officers he had found his 32-year-old wife unresponsive. She was slumped over the side of the couch, but his story about what he had been doing before discovering her kept changing, shifting, evolving, depending on who he was speaking to. At the scene, he told police he had gone outside to ensure their cars were locked. There had been a spate of recent auto burglaries in the neighborhood, he explained. He wanted to make sure their vehicles were secure. It was a plausible story, but to one friend, he said something entirely different. He told them he had gone for a walk to burn some energy. To another friend, he gave yet another version. He said he had been out back cutting some wood for signs that he made. A third story, contradicting the first two. And to his mother-in-law Susie, he told her he had been sitting at the kitchen table, working on his laptop with his back to Stacy. When he turned around, he said, he saw her slumped over the side of the couch. A fourth version of events. 4 different stories. 4 different versions. If someone is telling the truth about what they were doing when they discovered a loved one dead, the story doesn't change. The truth is the truth. When paramedics arrived, they found Stacy unresponsive. She was blue. She wasn't breathing. They rushed her to hospital, but despite their efforts, it was too late. Stacy Robinson Hunsucker was pronounced dead. The cause of death appeared obvious to everyone involved. Cardiac arrest. She had well-documented heart problems. She had a pacemaker. She had a history of mysterious cardiac events. The local police treated it as a natural death, a tragic but not suspicious passing of a young woman whose heart had simply given out. But Joshua's behavior in the hours and days that followed revealed something deeply wrong. He refused to allow a coroner to perform an autopsy. He was adamant about it, even though Stacy had registered to be an organ donor. For someone who was supposed to facilitate organ donation, refusing an autopsy was highly unusual. But Joshua was insistent, unwavering. Within 2 days, Stacy's body was cremated. The speed was remarkable, almost unseemly. Most families take weeks to arrange cremations, taking time to process their grief, to say goodbye properly, to make thoughtful arrangements. Joshua had her cremated almost immediately, as if he couldn't wait to destroy the evidence of what he'd done. And within those same 2 days, Joshua filed a claim for her $250,000 life insurance policy. Actually, 2 policies. One for $200,000, with a double indemnity clause that could pay $100,000, and another for $50,000. He was Joshua's sole beneficiary on both. The funeral arrangements told their own disturbing story. Stacy's funeral was arranged and paid for by her parents, not by her husband. Joshua seemed detached from the whole process, as if he were merely an observer rather than a grieving widower. As if he were going through the motions rather than mourning the loss of his wife of 8 years, the mother of his 2 young daughters. After Stacy's death, Joshua hired a babysitter named Kaylin McDonald to look after Piper and Willow. What she witnessed in the months that followed was deeply disturbing. She would later tell CBS 48 Hours Peter Van Sant exactly what she had observed, and her account painted a chilling picture. She said she never saw Joshua sad. Not once. Not ever. He didn't cry. He didn't appear depressed. He didn't seem to miss his wife at all. Instead, he was happy. Very happy. He was happy with his new girlfriend, a colleague named Jennifer Elkins, who everyone called Jen. They were all over each other all the time, Kaylin said. It was always about Jen. They talked constantly about their future together, about moving into a house together. Not the house Joshua had shared with Stacy, but buying a brand new one, starting fresh. Joshua rarely spoke about his deceased wife. He never said he missed Stacy. He never said he missed the girl's mother. He never shared memories of her with his daughters. It was as if Stacy had never existed, as if she'd been erased from their lives completely. Kaylin couldn't understand it. When her own father had died, she had talked about him constantly, unable to stop herself from sharing memories, from keeping his memory alive. The new girlfriend was visual in Joshua's life and in the lives of his 2 young daughters within 6 months of Stacy's death. She had moved into the home he had previously shared with his wife, the house where Stacy had died, the bed where Stacy had slept. It was as if she was simply Stacy's replacement, stepping into a role that had been vacated. Joshua's colleagues at Atrium Health's MedCenter Air had noticed the same disturbing pattern. They told investigators that Joshua seemed completely unaffected by his wife's death. They expressed deep concern to police about how quickly he had moved on with his girlfriend, about how visible she was, about how quickly she'd become part of his life. The speed was unseemly, inappropriate, shocking. They described him as appearing unfazed, as if Stacy's death had been an inconvenience rather than a tragedy, as if he'd been waiting for it to happen, and then there was the money. After collecting the $250,000 from Stacy's life insurance policies, Joshua went on a spending spree that raised eyebrows throughout the community. He bought a boat, an expensive one, worth somewhere between $80,000 and $100,000. A judge would later express concern about the purchase, warning Joshua through his attorney not to try hiding it, or he would go straight back to jail. He embarked on multiple expensive vacations with his new girlfriend, trips that the couple couldn't have afforded when Stacy was alive, when they were struggling with medical debt. Now, flush with insurance money, they were living it up, traveling, spending freely. He paid off the mortgage on the family's 1,516 square foot Mount Holly home, which was valued at $215,380. The wrongful death lawsuit filed by Stacy's parents would later detail these expenditures, painting a picture of a man who was thrilled to be free, thrilled to have money, thrilled to start a new life with his mistress. For Stacy's mother, Susie, these were massive, glaring red flags. She learned that Joshua had been seeing this woman even before her daughter's death. The affair had been ongoing, carried on in secret while Stacy was still alive, while Stacy was fighting for her life in intensive care units. And she knew about the life insurance claims, filed mere days after Stacy had died, before the funeral had even taken place. The pieces were starting to come together in Susie's mind. The rapid insurance claims, the refusal of an autopsy, the immediate cremation, the new girlfriend who had been there all along, her daughter's years of mysterious health problems that no doctor could explain, the boat, the vacations, the complete absence of grief. Something was very, very wrong. In May 2019, 9 months after her daughter's death, Susie Robinson made a decision that would change everything. She contacted the North Carolina Department of Insurance. She filed fraud allegations against her son-in-law. She suspected he had killed Stacy for the insurance money, to be free to pursue his relationship with his mistress without the inconvenience of a divorce. She had no idea this simple act, this mother's intuition, would trigger a full-blown murder investigation that would reveal the horrifying truth about what had happened to her daughter. Insurance Commissioner Mike Causey said that when the referral came through from Susie Robinson, it was sent straight to their Criminal Investigations Division. Initial reports from the local police department had listed Stacy's death as natural. A heart attack. Nothing suspicious. Case closed. File it away. But the insurance investigators weren't satisfied. They would dig deeper. They would question everything. They would follow the evidence wherever it led. The team assembled was formidable. Investigators from the North Carolina Department of Insurance Criminal Investigations Division, Gaston County Police, the Department of Homeland Security. Special Agent Lisa Morgan was assigned to the case, and as she began her investigation, she discovered something that would prove absolutely crucial. Because Stacy had been an organ donor, the LifeShare Donor Center had preserved a vial of her blood before she was cremated. This was routine procedure for organ donors, a standard practice to facilitate the donation process and ensure compatibility. But it would prove to be the difference between justice and a perfect crime, the single piece of evidence that Joshua hadn't counted on, hadn't planned for, couldn't destroy. The blood sample was sent to a laboratory for comprehensive toxicology testing. Standard tests came back negative for common poisons and drugs. Nothing unusual, nothing suspicious. But the investigators didn't stop there. They requested more specialized tests, broader screening, looking for substances that wouldn't normally be included in a routine toxicology panel. The results were absolutely shocking. Mike Causey said there were traces of poison in Stacy's blood, specifically tetrahydrozoline, a common chemical used in eye drops to reduce redness. But this wasn't a therapeutic level, wasn't an amount that could be explained by normal use. The concentration was 30 to 40 times higher than therapeutic amounts. These weren't levels that could be explained by someone using eye drops as directed, by accidentally ingesting a small amount. These were levels that could only come from deliberate, repeated, systematic poisoning. Forensic toxicologist Demi Garvin reviewed the results with growing alarm. She said that the presence of tetrahydrozoline in that concentration absolutely warranted further investigation. She described it as a modern-day Mickey Finn, where a substance is introduced into a beverage without the consent of the individual. This was poisoning. This was murder. Tetrahydrozoline is a decongestant found in over-the-counter eye drops, like Vicane and nasal sprays. When used as directed, applied externally to the eyes or nose, it's relatively safe. But when ingested, it becomes something else entirely, something deadly. The symptoms of tetrahydrozoline ingestion can mimic natural illness, and can be dangerous without being easy to detect on routine tests. For someone with Stacy's documented heart condition, for someone with a pacemaker, someone whose heart was already compromised, it would be particularly deadly. The poison would attack her weakest point, her most vulnerable system, making her death seem like nothing more than another tragic cardiac event. And crucially, devastatingly, standard toxicology screens don't routinely test for it. It's not part of the normal panel of substances that pathologists look for in suspected poisonings. Unless you're specifically looking for tetrahydrozoline, unless you know what you're searching for, unless you have reason to suspect it, you won't find it. It's invisible. North Carolina State Attorney Jordan Green would later explain to the court that the medicine has a dramatic effect on your heart and would cause heart stoppage or heart failure. This wasn't an accident. This was calculated, premeditated, cold-blooded murder. Joshua Hunsucker, as a flight paramedic since 2013, as someone with extensive medical training, would have had intimate, detailed knowledge of medications and their effects on the human body. Court documents specifically noted that his training and experience would certainly provide a thorough understanding of various types of medication and how those medications could react in the body. Additionally, his employment provided access to non-controlled substances which did not require logging or inventory control. He had the means, the knowledge, and the opportunity. The investigation expanded rapidly. Detectives began interviewing Joshua's friends, family, colleagues, anyone who might have information. And what they learned made the case even more disturbing, even more chilling. About 2 weeks before Stacy's death, something significant had happened just 20 miles south of Mount Holly. A nurse named Lana Sue Clayton had been arrested on the 31st of August 2018 for poisoning her husband Stephen Clayton with eye drops. Clayton had confessed to sneaking eye drops into her husband's water over 3 days until he died. The case received extensive media coverage in the Charlotte area. Everyone was talking about it. Court documents noted prosecutors pointed to several similarities between that case and Joshua's. Both worked in the medical field. Both had been home alone with their spouse at the time of death. Both deaths were initially ruled as natural causes. Both used tetrahydrozoline poisoning. Court documents alleged that within days of learning about the South Carolina case, Joshua had surreptitiously placed eye drops in Stacy's water and exposed her to deadly amounts of tetrahydrozoline. But there was more. During their investigation, detectives spoke to Joshua's former colleagues at Atrium Health's MedCenter Air. Before Stacy's death, Joshua had told 2 co-workers that if he killed someone, he would do so using Vicine or other eye drops. These weren't jokes or idle comments. These were specific threats from a medical professional who understood exactly how it worked. He had told them precisely how he would commit murder if he ever chose to do so. And then, shortly after the South Carolina case received its media coverage, Stacy Robinson Hunsucker was dead. This was a premeditated, calculated murder. On the 19th of December, 2019, Joshua Lee Hunsucker was arrested at his Mount Holly home. He was charged with first-degree murder. Joshua was also charged with felony insurance fraud and obtaining property under false pretenses. He had received $250,000 in benefits, whilst allegedly knowing that his wife had died by homicide, by his own hand. His bond was set at $1.5 million. On Christmas Eve 2019, just 5 days after his arrest, he posted that bond and was released. A temporary restraining order had been issued to prevent him from using the insurance money, but somehow he found the funds. That release would prove to be a catastrophic, devastating decision. Out on bond, Joshua's behavior became increasingly disturbing and dangerous. District Attorney Travis Page would later state that the defendant's dangerous actions would continue to escalate. He would be proven correct. Joshua began a systematic campaign of harassment against Stacy's parents, John and Susie Robinson. He routinely photographed and videotaped them at their granddaughter's sports events. He sent packages to their home, demanding they drop the murder case. He followed them in his vehicle and drove by their house repeatedly. He made vulgar gestures at them in the parking lot of the church they attended. The intimidation was relentless, designed to terrify them into silence. Then, on the 4th of February, 2023, Joshua staged his own kidnapping. He filed a police report claiming he had stopped to change a flat tire when he was pistol-whipped in the head multiple times. His hands were zip-tied, he said, and he was injected with an unknown substance. He told police his attacker was John Robinson, Stacy's father. He was trying to frame his father-in-law for assault and kidnapping. Mount Holly police investigated thoroughly. They found no evidence to support any part of Joshua's story. They determined he had fabricated the entire incident to shift responsibility for his wife's death onto the Robinsons. It was desperate and bizarre. The police saw through it immediately. But Joshua wasn't done. Just weeks after the fake kidnapping, in February 2023, Joshua poisoned his own 11-year-old daughter, leading to a serious medical scare and hospitalization. Tests confirmed the same chemical in her system, plus an antidepressant not approved for children, the same drug found in Joshua's truck. During her treatment, Joshua told doctors it appeared she'd been given Visine. Medical staff noted this wasn't a reasonable conclusion based on her symptoms. Prosecutors believe Joshua poisoned his daughter to frame the Robinsons and remove them from his daughter's lives. In July 2024, a judge found Joshua had abused his daughter and neglected both children. He was arrested again in August 2024 for witness intimidation. In November 2024, his bond was revoked and he remains in custody without bond. It was evil. It was monstrous. It showed the extreme lengths he was willing to go to in order to avoid accountability. On the 26th of November 2019, just weeks before his arrest for murder, Joshua allegedly set fire to medical equipment aboard an Atrium Health helicopter during a flight over Charlotte. At 12:59 a.m., he set fire to a syringe pump whilst the helicopter was mid-flight. The fire forced an emergency landing at a car dealership on Independence Boulevard. No one was injured. Joshua was charged with felony arson. The timing was significant. This happened less than a month before his murder arrest. Investigators believed Joshua sensed his arrest was imminent, and the arson was another desperate attempt to create chaos. Atrium Health issued a statement expressing shock, saying it was unfathomable what may have possessed him to endanger lives in such a way. Joshua had also been placed on administrative leave for alleged workplace misconduct before his murder arrest. The day after his December 2019 arrest, he was terminated from Atrium Health's MedCenter Air, where he had worked since 2013. Joshua's trial was originally planned for March 2025, but prosecutors indicated the new developments may push it back to autumn 2025. Through their attorney, following Joshua's initial arrest, Stacy's family released a powerful statement that captured their determination and their pain. They said, "We will not rest until justice is served. We will do everything in our power to support and care for your beautiful daughters, Piper and Willow." Kelly Krieger, who knew Stacy since high school, said, "She did not deserve for this to happen to her. She was a great mother. She was a happy person." In April 2020, Susie Robinson wrote, "Oh, my sweet, funny, lovable, smiling Stacy, you are missing so many milestones. It makes me so sad you are not here to celebrate your pumpkin's birthday. I gave both of your girls an extra hug especially for you today. The case highlighted the crucial role of fraud investigations in uncovering homicides. Insurance Commissioner Mike Causey reflected, "Who would ever guess that an insurance fraud investigation could lead to a full-blown murder investigation? Without Susie Robinson's mother's intuition and the preserved blood sample from organ donation, Joshua would have committed the perfect crime." Stacy Robinson Hunsucker was a devoted mother, teacher, and church member. She loved crafting, going to the beach, watching sports, and taking pictures of her daughters. Her smile radiated happiness and comfort to everyone who knew her. As of November 2024, Joshua remains in Gaston County Jail without bond. His daughters, now aged approximately 12 and 14, have been removed from his care. John and Susie Robinson continue fighting for custody of their granddaughters. Whilst justice remains pending, one thing is certain: Stacy Robinson Hunsucker will not be forgotten.